Hey everyone! Today I would like to share with you something a bit more exotic than usual. In this video I will show you how to harvest steam from a hot steam vent and turn it into electrical power and extract some hot water along the way. So first, to avoid confusion, I'm not talking about the typical cool steam vents that output 110 degrees Celsius of steam. I'm talking about the hot steam ones that output steam at 500 degrees Celsius. So before going over the design itself, let me explain what we strive to accomplish here. This steam vent emits a steady amount of steam at 500 degrees in each eruption, and our goal is to harvest all of this steam and turn it into power. For this purpose we are going to use the steam turbine, which accomplishes just that. However, we have a few obstacles along the way which we need to overcome. Number one, the steam that comes out of the vent is, 500 degrees Celsius, but the steam turbine only needs a steam at temperature of 200 degrees to operate at maximum power. It will not generate more power if the steam will get hotter above 200 degrees and will heat itself instead. So our goal is to try and keep the steam at 200 degrees Celsius. Second, the steam vent will stop emitting steam if the chamber around it gets overpressurized. This happens when the amount of steam in the chamber is at around 5 kilograms per tile. For every second the steam vent is overpressurized, it doesn't emit steam, which could have been harvested for power. So we want the vent to be constantly emitting steam during its eruption period. And number three, the steam inside the chamber must never be below 125 degrees for extended periods of time, since the steam turbine will not pump in steam at temperature below that value. This can result in a deadlock where the steam vent can no longer emit steam due to overpressurization, and the steam turbine not being able to remove the steam due to it being too cold. Now that we have finished setting our goals to tame the steam vent, let's see how this design accomplishes that. So this design is composed out of three chambers. A main chamber, which is the one in the center that houses the steam vent, and two secondary ones on the sides of the main chamber. There is a steam turbine above each chamber. So let's start with solving problem number 2, of preventing the steam chamber from getting overpressurized. The first thing to do is to click on the steam vent and check how much steam it emits per second. In this case, it says 1752 grams per second. Now, the purpose of the steam turbine in the main chamber is to harvest all of this steam, turn it into power, and output the water that comes out at 95 degrees Celsius to somewhere else. Now, a steam turbine has 5 inlets each, and one inlet can pump in 400 grams per second of steam. So in total, 5 inlets can pump in 2000 grams per second of steam, or 2 kilos of steam per second. Now the point here is that we need the turbine to pump in more steam than the vent can generate to prevent the chamber to be overpressurized. If the steam vent produces more than 2000 grams per second of steam, then we are going to need to extend the main chamber and add a second turbine to keep up with the steam vent output. So here is an example of a main chamber that uses 2 steam turbines to harvest steam from a vent that outputs around 3000 grams per second of steam. Now let's talk about solving problems number 1 and 3 that revolves around controlling the steam temperature. The important thing to mention here is that the steam turbine in the main chamber is active the moment the steam vent erupts. It doesn't wait for the steam to cool to 200 degrees and then activates. We can't afford to do so, or else we risk overpressuring the chamber and lose power. The cooling here needs to be both capable to cool the steam fast enough to 200 degrees, but not overcooling it, that is, to prevent the deadlock. This is where the side chambers come in. The side chambers are filled with large amounts of steam, each of them, and are connected to the main chamber with a controlled heat conductor composed of 2 layers of metal tiles and a mechanized airlock sandwich between them. This heat conductor conducts heat between the steam in the main chamber and the steam in the secondary chambers when the mechanized airlock is closed, and prevents heat transfer when the mechanized airlock is open. The purpose of the side chamber is to absorb the excess amount of heat of the steam in the main chamber and use this excess heat to generate power using the secondary turbines. To prevent the side chamber from overcooling the steam in the main chamber, we use simple automation to control the mechanized airlocks in the heat conductors. The thermosensor inside the main chamber is set to 127 degrees Celsius and sends a green signal when the temperature of the steam is below this set value. This sensor is connected to both mechanized airlocks. Now, when the temperature of the steam inside the main chamber is below the set value of 197 degrees, the sensor will output green and both mechanized airlock will open and prevent heat transfer. When the temperature of the steam inside the main chamber rises above 197 degrees, the sensor will output red and both mechanized airlocks will close and enable heat transfer with the side chambers. So that's all there is to say about the general operation of this design. Now let's talk about the complementary parts in this steam tamer. The cooling of the steam turbine is accomplished with an aqua tuner cooling loop, and polluted water is used as the coolant. Since the cooling needed for the turbines is minimal, the aqua tuner is active for small periods of time and doesn't consume a lot of power. Both thermosensors are set to 10 degrees and above. This determines the temperature of the coolant that goes out of the thermo aqua tuner. In the power overlay, we have the turbines connected directly into the main power grid. The aqua tuner and the liquid shutoff valves are fed by a separate transformer. The chamber where the three turbines reside is filled with hydrogen to improve their cooling. I used this pipe previously to pump hydrogen from some external tanks to fill up this room. In the automation overlay, we have our thermosensor connected to the mechanized airlocks and a smart battery controlling the steam turbines. If the smart battery is full, it will deactivate the steam turbines to prevent power waste. Now, I highly recommend giving those turbines the highest priority in your power grid to keep them active as much as possible. If the turbines will be deactivated for long periods of time, then the steam chamber will get overpressurized and potential steam will be wasted. However, a deadlock will not occur because the steam temperature will not drop below 200 degrees Celsius thanks to our automation. I've also added 2 rows of diamond temp shift plates around the thermosensor to even out the temperature spread near the inlets of the turbine and to keep the temperature from fluctuating widely and improve the thermosensor reading as a result. So let's go over specific parts that require specific materials. So the aqua tuner and the liquid shutoff inside the secondary steam chamber are made out of steel. The metal tiles used for the heat conductors are made out of iron, and the mechanized airlocks are made out of wolframite. However, I highly recommend making the airlocks out of steel instead to improve the heat transfer capability of the heat conductor. And finally, let's go over several important bits of information. So number 1, the steam per tile in the secondary chamber is at around 500 kilograms per tile. This is very important. Achieving this, however, is very easy. The nice thing about working with 2 rows steam chambers is that you don't need to create a vacuum for them. Instead, you can just fill the first row with water, which will end up at 1000 kilograms of water per tile that later turns into steam, and then add a little bit more water. Then the water rises to the second row and pushes all the gases out, and you end up with a chamber filled with water only, and later with large amount of steam. Number 2, the gas pump inside the turbine chamber was used previously to pump out most of the gases to make room for hydrogen. There is no need to pump completely everything out and create total vacuum. Just the majority is fine. As long as hydrogen occupies the vast majority of the room, it will function just fine. Next, number 3. The water that comes out of the steam turbine is at 95 degrees Celsius, and while it's too hot for farming, it's perfect for feeding electrolyzers for oxygen production. And finally, number 4, the most important part, is when priming the main chamber for the first time after digging out the steam vent. So the main chamber, first and foremost, must be in total vacuum. The thermosensor, however, will not work automatically in total vacuum, and it will not change states even when steam is introduced around it. To make it function, you need to trigger it manually by playing with the above and below buttons when the steam engulfs the sensor and the vacuum is gone. This is very important because the mechanized airlocks in their default states are closed and are transferring heat to the side chambers. If not done fast enough, they will overcool the steam and create a deadlock. Now, for this purpose, I have added a timestamp in the video that shows you how it's done. And that's pretty much it. I think that steam vents are a fantastic source of power if you're lucky to come across one, since taming them is much more simpler compared to, for example, magma volcanoes. So I would be happy to hear what you think about it, and if you have any questions, then please post them in the comments below, and I'll do my best to answer them. And as always, I will pass my torch to my duplicants, and I will demonstrate how to build the steam vent tamer from scratch. So for me, thanks for watching, and enjoy the clip.